The presidential election has come and gone, with President-elect Bola Tinubu emerging victorious. Nigerians are now focused on the upcoming governorship election slated for Saturday. During the campaigns, many promises were made, and going by the president-elect's antecedents, there are high hopes that the country will experience remarkable development under his administration. Now, come Saturday, right here in Lagos, Governor Sanwo-Olu will also battle to retain his position. The big question remains, will his performance and campaign promises be enough to help him secure the highly coveted governorship seat? And will considerations for a state like Lagos aligning with the APC at the center play any role in the outcome of the upcoming polls? Well, joining us in the studio to answer some of this question is a lawyer and member of the All Progressives Congress, Sheung Fale. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning, guys.
Great. Right. Some of the questions have been raised.
Yes.
And recall that the governor came on 6 pillars, talking about the themes: transportation, traffic management and transportation, health and environment, education and technology, like that. Would you say that he has been able to respond to the yearnings of Lagos residents based on these themes, giving us a scorecard?
I think he has, and I'm glad that you've looked at his scorecard based on that agenda that he himself and his team set for Lagosians. And it's necessary to then dimension those things.
Absolutely.
To begin to, look and see whether he's really done exceedingly well. If you look at his team agenda, the first element there is the transport and traffic management element, transportation and traffic management. And if you look at some of the initiatives that has been achieved in the last 4 years, then we can begin to say that there's considerable hope and for even much more improvement and for benefit of Lagosians. And let's look at the transportation. We've seen the recent launch of the Blue Line. It's the first of its kind, built from the scratch, and it takes some level of commitment to be able to achieve that. And you look at the Red Line that is also under construction. That's another serious statement to the transportation model that the Lagos State is all about, which is providing mass transit in waterways, in the train and road for Lagosians to ease their ways of doing business and moving around. And then if you look at some of the initiatives under the water transport system, where there's been a lot of expansion in jetty construction, particularly for the riverine areas in Badagry, in Etiosa, to bring an inclusive transportation system to Lagosians. That's also part of the things that they promise under the theme agenda. And those initiatives are worthy of commendation. And it takes a pragmatic leader and government to articulate and then implement those things. So in my view, when it comes to transportation, they've done exceedingly well. Also, speaking about transportation, you look at even some of the road construction that they've done, some of the traffic management initiatives in terms of bridge construction in Penn Cinema, for instance. There's been a lot of ease of gridlock around that, and then some traffic diversion. And of course, speak to LASMA, which is part of a traffic management initiative. We know as Lagosians that LASMA do need improvement in training and human management, but we also know their impact in traffic management. I know that when LASMA personnel are off certain routes, they're killed. So all of these initiatives speak to the government's plans and success stories regarding transportation and management. Of course, you then go on to the next word, which is healthcare.
Yeah.
Under that scheme, I think that they've also done very well. I am aware that they are undertaking the construction of a very robust and sophisticated maternal and child care center in Lagos Island, which is a reconstruction of the old Mercy Hospital. That's an initiative that should be commended. They've also kind of decentralized some of these maternal MCC centers in Ikorodu, in Badagry, and all of that. That's a worthy commendation from the health perspective. If you look at some of their initiative under the Lagos State Health Scheme, where they've brought in some vulnerable people and providing free access to healthcare and, in an affordable way and all of that. And also, of course, propagating the health insurance scheme for Lagosians, where almost about 1 million people have signed up so far. Those are initiatives that I think are worthy of commendation and all of that. And because it's very important to dimension some of these things under that theme. So anytime we speak about whether it's performed or this government has performed or not, I want to judge that yesterday. I think it's important to focus on that team agenda to see what as the specific things that have been done under each and every sector that they set for themselves. And I think...
all right, you talked about transport infrastructure and all of that. One infrastructure Nigerians or Lagosians are looking forward to is the 4th Mainland Bridge, which a lot of people, when it was announced, people were so happy about it. And in fact, the issue of where it is going to, start from and where it's going to be and all of the accompanying infrastructure and benefits, Nigerians or Lagosians are beginning to expect what it's going to look like. Now, paint for us a picture from that window, because if you look at the structure of Lagos, where the 4th Mainland Bridge is going to be, it's like connecting the Aja-Ekpe area to Ikorodu access. Now, there's been a huge population and concentration of people within the Ikeja and Mainland area, and it is expected that the 4th Mainland Bridge will open that aspect, that's part of Lagos. But talk to us how the benefits that will be accruable to the 4th Mainland Bridge as an infrastructure.
It's perhaps going to be, it's going to be the most defining infrastructural project for Lagos for at least the next decade. Because what you find is that the construction of that bridge and the accompanying infrastructure will open a different side of Lagos. We know the traffic and human, traffic around that axis, where everybody looks for a 3rd Mainland Bridge to get out and get in. And opening that area would not only ease the traffic and movement around this side, but will also help the development around that axis. And we've seen a lot of other initiatives that are coming there. Of course, the existing free trade zone, the Dangote refinery, the Lagos International Airport. Now, the key thing and why it's important for Lagosians to understand the ramification of this weekend election is that it will take an active collaboration with the federal government to deliver that project in all sorts of financing support and other supports that will be necessary. And that's why we urge Lagosians to make the right and informed decision. This is perhaps the best time to keep Lagos aligned with the federal government, such that the sort of infrastructural supports and enhancement that we've seen in the last 4 to 8 years, where that alignment has taken place, will continue to happen. And if you recall, still on the road transport initiative, the red line would have been concluded by Asiwaju long ago when he was in government, because it was the fastest and the easiest to do. But because of misalignment with the federal government, the approval didn't come. And even when Babatunde Raji Fashola was in government, that approval still didn't come. That's what led to the greenfield construction of the blue line. But with the federal government alignment with state government, we've seen considerable movement in that line, and we've seen also, of course, necessary approvals for the Lekki Free Trade Zone and all of the other infrastructure that were there, the international airports. All of these initiatives were on the table, the deep sea ports. All of these things were on the table prior to now. So that's why we keep saying that at this junction of Lagos' trajectory, it is important to keep us in lockstep with the federal government. And I'm sure reasonable Lagosians will agree with that.
Right. Now, one of the themes agenda was also making Lagos a 21st century economy. How close have we come? I know you have mentioned deep sea port and all of it, but talk to us, give us a deeper picture of how close we have come to being a 21st century economy.
I think, in my view, one of the key success, yardstick towards achieving a 21st century economy is the sort of backbone that the government is putting in place to achieve that. When we talk about 21st century economy, we're looking at an economy that is digital, the economy that the internet is at the backbone of undertaking services and rendering services from government. And you look at that from over 3,000 kilometers of fiber that the state has enabled in laying across the state. That's really the backbone of making that possible. And then you begin to look at the sort of infrastructure that also the state is providing in our learning environment in schools, where they are now using some of this infrastructure to also deliver teaching and learning. We see some of the schools now that the state government has constructed. There, of course, provision for internet-enabled teaching and learning. These are key elements in getting us to that level. And of course, then you look at some of the security initiatives that are being built in terms of CCTV cameras. Also, without the sort of fiber that we're talking about, all of those things are not going to be possible. So I think that is a soft infrastructure that people might not see if you're not very observant, and that is key to ensuring that we move ahead to that sort of economy. But importantly also is to look at also the service delivery from the state government itself. The state government is at the forefront. I'm sure people are aware that Lagos is perhaps the most interactive states when it comes to service delivery. I mean, we know that they can get better, and I'm sure then the way to getting better, but people are now able to sit at the comfort of their house to interact with the tax man to see and pay their taxes. Mm-hmm. They are beginning to render certain services online, and that's really where we should go and where we're heading in Lagos.
Let's also look at another aspect of the themes agenda, which has to do with education. So much investments, some would say, have been made in that aspect, but make us understand better how far we have come.
It's the state government responsibility, obviously, to undertake, infrastructural development in primary and secondary education. And successive governments in Lagos has lived up to that responsibility, in my view. And this government is no different. It's, in my understanding, has constructed over 1,000 classrooms for primary and secondary school. Like I said earlier, the state governments were working through the Ministry of Education are now beginning to introduce this sort of learning tools that is compatible with the 21st century economy that we want to build. I also know that there have been extensive investment in teachers' training beyond the physical infrastructure, which is key. Of course, there is also the development in curriculum to ensure that one of the key building blocks for tomorrow leaders are the STEM subjects. And there's been extensive development in curriculum to make sure that students in public schools are fully imbibed in those key developmental subjects that is key to the sort of environment and country that we want to build. But beyond that is also the free education. It comes with a lot of money, state resources that is put into ensuring that vulnerable children and everybody inclusive goes to school without paying anything in primary and secondary school. And if you look at still talking about tuition, the Lagos State University is perhaps one of the lowest tuition-paying universities in Nigeria. That's thanks to the state government. And looking at, of course, access to this sort of learning is the recent establishment of 2 universities by the state. Of course, I'm glad that one of them is a science and technology university, which speaks to the sort of mentality that the government has, because science and technology is, the future of the country and what the youths are looking for. So in terms of education, I think I'm happy that that trajectory is continue, and I'm hopeful that when we re-elect the governor and this team, that will continue and even be much more deepened.
All right, let's scale up the conversation a little bit. We see the president-elect is getting busy with all the meetings and all the briefings he's getting, is trying to fine-tune how things are going to be. We see the government launched Agenda 2050. I'm just using that as an instance.
Yes.
And part of it is to create over 120 million jobs at that time. We have seen where the government currently had said that they were going to take about 100 million people out of poverty and so on. We have seen that when it comes to when government is directly involved with creating employment and so on, it is always not adequate. Talk to us from the involvement of private sector in achieving a goal like this on the national scale, because it's not just only Lagos. We're talking unemployment. It's a huge burden on the Nigerian state.
In my view, what is expected of government is to set the framework and, of course, provide the enabling environment. I'm not privy to the new agenda that the federal government just released, but I want to believe that it's an agenda that is all-encompassing. I don't think, and I don't think anybody should expect that the federal government or the government would be the only provider of jobs and opportunities. What the government should do and will do is to provide those opportunities. So there must be synergy between the federal government or the government and the private sector. And when you look at some of these numbers that are being, put out there in terms of job creation, I think the key questions we should ask ourselves is how and where are these jobs going to come from? What are the initiatives that will be undertaken to ensure that these jobs come? And from where we stand, from looking at the policy document of Asiwaju, we can begin to plug where those numbers are coming from. And we've said it in so many ways. If we're looking to increase our security personnel, that's a job creation element. So that's a job creation angle to it. If we're looking to diversify the economy by encouraging more youthful people to come into agriculture, not just come into agriculture where you're providing all of the necessary support, the financing required with collaboration with Bank of Agriculture, the CBN and all of that, that is a job creation. We can put a number to that. And when you move to the sort of infrastructural renewal and upgrade that we say that this administration will do, we can begin to put numbers into that. So that's really key. And of course, then when you now create an enabling environment where businesses are growing and thriving, then they will employ jobs and will create jobs and will employ people. So I think that those are the pockets of places that is important that in the grand scheme of things, somebody is paying attention to see that where this job comes, is it 100,000 jobs there, 1 million jobs there, 50,000 jobs there, all of those add to bringing down our unemployment numbers, and that's where we will be focusing on. I'm sure Asiwaju will be focusing on.
The matter of poverty was also raised in this matter of the 2050 agenda, and recall that President Buhari had once said that he was going to lift 100 million people out of poverty, but when the reports came, I think sometime last year, we saw that 130 million of persons are, living within the bracket of poverty. Now, in terms of what the president will do differently at addressing poverty, what should Nigerians expect?
It's some of these things that we've spoken to, and I think the 130 million people are people living in multidimensional poverty.
Yes.
And when we talk about multidimensional poverty, it's really about access to healthcare, access to education, access to transportation. So first and foremost, bringing our multidimensional poverty number down is for government to ensure that all of these things are done. And access is about ensuring that rather than spending an hour getting to an healthcare facility, you're spending 20 minutes. That's a reduction in that number. All of these things ultimately also reduces the real financial, poverty that's probably about 50 to 60 million of us. And I think that it is by providing economic opportunities, by eradicating the challenges that stifle or the issues that stifle economic growth, particularly insecurity, that we'll begin to see some form of poverty reduction. Because when you look at the sort of trajectory that we've been in the last decade or two, where economic activities in certain parts of the country had more or less disappeared because of insecurity, then you can know where our poverty numbers are coming from. Right. So if we have a leader that is focused on reducing those issues and, of course, providing the sort of coherent policy framework to enable the private sector, either small-scale and medium or large-scale enterprises, thrive, then that's really where the poverty reduction, we see it coming from. And from the policy trust of Asiwaju, I have no doubt that that will be achieved and that will be done, at least within the short, medium, and long-term period.
Let's talk about the strategy of marketing Nigeria, because Nigeria, you see Nigeria as a product, because the market is a very huge one where it can attract any kind of companies from around the world. And the moment Nigeria is marketed well, it is expected that the FDIs will begin to flow in, so that when we are talking about cash crunch, we're talking about Nigeria being broke and foreign reserve and depleting and so on. By the time the FDI flows in, it injects monies into the system. How tasking would it be to market Nigeria in that context that can attract foreign direct investment from around the world?
It will be tasking because, I think why I think it will be tasking is that Nigerians don't help generally. There's this general, penchant for really projecting the negativity about our country rather than the positive side. So I think one of the key issues is for Nigerians generally to have a mindset change about looking to the positive side. But of course, the responsibility lies in our key leaders, the leaders that will be tasked with these issues, to project confidence, to project the right ideas. I say that the attracting capital is a business. So you must engage it in that regard. And we have the requisite information and how should I say it? We have enough things to sell, about ourselves in terms of our people, our resilience, our educational background, our resources. And so what we need is a team of people that are able to put this together and attract the sort of investment we need to facilitate the growth that we need. So in my view, I think it's a matter of the team, and of course it's a matter of policy change, mentality change from Nigerians. If we have that working together, it'll be easier sell. It'll be an easier sell for the government. Okay.
Now, when you look at the papers this morning talking about the Global Terrorism Index, there was the aspect of IPOB being ranked number 10th. And then it also went ahead to say that the impact of terrorism in Nigeria has declined from what the records were in 2021 as against what we have in 2022. And the matter of security is also at the front burner for a majority of Nigerians, how it will be addressed such that Nigerians can sleep with their two eyes closed, if possible. Now, what should Nigerians begin to look forward to with an Asiwaju government?
The indices that you've just rolled out shows some or support some of the things that we've been saying here in the last couple of months, that look, there's been considerable investment in security system to really tackle some of these challenges. It will take a long time, or it will take a bit of time for all of those things to trickle down. But when you look at those investments in equipment and all of that, they are probably responsible for some of this reduction in the numbers. But key to us going forward, it's really about the sort of economic opportunities that you provide. We've said it over and over again that the lack of economic opportunity breeds criminality and violent, crimes or non-state actors to then take effect. So from an Asiwaju perspective, I am sure that the sort of economic impetus that will come through will really reduce that. Then, of course, there's that renewed focus on the key issues that have been facing the security apparatus generally, the lack of personnel, the lack of equipment, and all of that. Then there's the real stakeholders engagement that is required to then look at our security architecture to say, look, whether, we're well, oiled in that regard. What are we doing about community policing? What are we doing about forest guards to protect our forests against banditry and all of those kidnappers? Then what are we doing with our neighbors, talking about the West African neighbors to, of course, ensure that some of the challenges that they face do not spill over into our own territory? What are we doing regarding border control and, getting a bit of control around our border to ensure that we monitor what goes in and what comes out in terms of arms proliferation and all of that? So I think that with the right leadership, these things can really still come down further. And then Nigerians can begin to see that, look, security challenges will perhaps be a thing of the past. And they can focus on other productive issues like growing the economy, enhancing our agricultural productivity, and doing the brick and mortar work that is required to build a sustainable nation.
Talking about agriculture, the DNA of Nigeria is actually in agriculture, and that is why it reflects on our national flag, the green, white, green. An Asiwaju government talked about when he was giving his acceptance speech, he mentioned the issue of commodity boards and then bringing the glory of agriculture. We all know that a lot of the big infrastructure that Nigeria has, some of the proceeds came from agriculture. In fact, the name Giant of Africa, where we ran the entire African continent, all the proceeds were from agriculture, where we had this regional advantage to crop and production and so on. Are we seeing in Asiwaju government, are we seeing the possibility or likelihood of enhancing what we used to be in the early 60s and 70s?
If we go by what Asiwaju said throughout his campaign, I think that agriculture, the agricultural sector, including all the agricultural value chain, will perhaps be one of his most defining sector where he will focus on. Because if we're looking at the sort of growth in terms of GDP, real GDP, and job creation that he envisaged, majority of the job creation will come from agricultural-based activities. And that's why I think that there will be a lot of focus on that. And key to that is the strategic thought around providing access to finance for farmers, either small scale or medium scale and large scale farmers. There must be a clear path to accessing finance to then aid their activities. Importantly also, if you look at some of the challenges that we see, is also the sort of support that they get in irrigation system, and then of course in all of these scientific based feeds and all of that is important. So government will be doing a lot of that to ensure that that is up to speed. But key to that is also the arable land under cultivation, and I think that if we go by what he said, which is that it will move the arable land under cultivation from what it is about 35% now to 65% in 4 years. That's a considerable increase in productivity if that arable land then is cultivated and made available for productive agricultural produce. So I have no doubt that that will remain, a focus of his attention. But I think that what is important is then to look at the community board that he has promised. That community board will go a long way in guaranteeing or giving confidence to the farmers that, look, my produce is not going to go to waste. So once I produce, there's this off-taker.
It's a clearinghouse.
Yes, and then all we do. So I will be confident that will be one of the first things that he will do in his government to ensure that that community board comes up and running in the regional hubs, and then we can take it from there.
Right. One other key aspect that Nigerians are looking forward to is this matter of subsidy that he has said that he's going to remove. And we know how much we have spent, trillions of naira with regards to our subsidy. But how is that money going to be channeled to the benefit of Nigerians and then cushion the effect of that removal?
What we can be rest assured of is a consultative approach to subsidy removal, because it's very important. Like I said recently, subsidy is an emotive subject, but I think I'm glad that there's a general consensus amongst Nigeria that it is not sustainable anymore. And so this is probably the easiest time for government to remove it if it can manage its communications and engagement appropriately. And the key to managing that communication and engagement is demonstrating to the people what the proceeds and where the proceeds will go.
Yes.
And we must realize that our issue first and foremost is affordability of that subsidy. So it's not as if we're removing 1 trillion for subsidy, then that 1 trillion is automatically available for something. It's really not available. That's why we're saying we cannot afford it. But there will be something to cushion the effects. Yeah. So rather than spending that 1 billion on a wasteful subsidy, if we're spending 800 billion on cushioning the effects, there's still a savings, right? So cushioning the effects entails providing certain structural and social investment programs where people can take direct benefit of this proceed. Cushioning the effects means providing infrastructural development that probably lessen journey times and discomfort around movement around. So if, for instance, it takes me 2 hours to get to my destination, which means that the cost of transportation in that 2 hours will be X. But if it then takes me 20 minutes, the cost will be lower. And that's really what the people care about. Then we look at healthcare, which those socioeconomic factors that really impact on productivity that can help. These are places that I believe that savings will go to, that Nigerians can then begin to say, okay, wait a minute. Yes, we don't have, we're not being subsidized anymore when it comes to petroleum products, but our living conditions is different and better because of what we get in healthcare, what we get in improved educational facilities, what we get in transportational enhancement and improvement. So that's really key. Where that funding goes is important, but importantly is the engagement with key stakeholders. And I think that would also be a key part of that process going forward. But I think that there is no ambiguity about subsidy removal from Asiwaju. He said it, that he will go. And I'm sure that he will remain true to his word.
All right. We see a lot of young people involved in the Japa syndrome, where a lot of people are just scared. Some people just want to leave to where things are easier. Even some people have good jobs, but it is not easy to live in a country where you have financial crisis, you have fuel, energy crisis, you have housing crisis, you have crisis all over. Some people just want to go to somewhere where there can be some level of sanity.
Yes.
And so people just begin to move in droves, not only in the health sector, in the education sector. Every sector. Young people are leaving. Even in the banking sector, we understand a lot of young people who are into the tech are leaving. What assurances will our Asiwaju government bring to change the Japa to a Jakpada? We have gone, but we are back now. Kind of, so that people will begin to feel that it is better to begin to go back home to take advantage of some of the opportunities that the government will provide.
This is the first time I'm hearing the reverse of Jakpada.
Really?
Jakpada.
Yes.
And hopefully that will happen. I think that the most important way to do that is for Nigerians, particularly the youth, to see a government that is focused, laser focused on attending to their peculiarities. And key to that peculiarity is unemployment. We have a very, very high rate of youth unemployment. And I am glad that one of the key policy or statement or promises that Asiwaju made is to halve that unemployment rate in 4 years. that will take a lot of hard work, and it's good that he's put himself in that pathway. And key to that is really, for me, a focused, perhaps, ministry that has all of the initiatives to tackle the issues that youths are concerned with. How do I mean? We know that there's a lot of ministry and departments and agencies that are doing all sorts of things regarding youth empowerment, youth development, and all of that. We need a body that can, harness all of those things and channel them appropriately, that can interact with, the CBN, the Bank of Agriculture, to channel funding towards youth-led enterprises, towards youth involvement in agriculture, like he has said. Those things must be done in a pragmatic and practical way, rather than, all of these promises. There must be a concerted effort to ensure that youth are enabled to thrive, either in tech space, where you're supporting the ecosystem for, the sort of innovations that is associated with youth, either in sports and what's it called, entertainment. Those are the key things that are required. But speaking to the JAPA itself is also the general bigger issue of the state of the economy and the environment. What is the state of our educational facilities? Because people then look, why do I want to stay here when my kids can't go to school, and we can't afford, we can't access, a decent healthcare. So key to that is also a government that is looking at some of those issues. And then once all of those issues are addressed, even if people are not japa dying, they will stop at least going in the first place. And I think that is the key. It's just a focus,
focus area.
Yes, on the youth and what is really key to them.
Quickly, in a few seconds, because we need to wrap this up now, talking about Saturday's governorship election. What is Sanwo-Olu going to do differently if he is re-elected? I think that is important for a lot of persons to know.
Based on his campaign, in the last couple of weeks, I think there will be much more public engagement, because from where I stand, if you look at the key things that he's done a lot of work, but maybe people do not really know that because they are perhaps detached. But with the recent bliss in engagement with the public, you could say, okay, they did this. So I think there will be a considerable level of public engagement as to what the state and what the government is doing. Because in every area of the themes agenda that we've highlighted, there is considerable activities going on. I also expect that to continue and to be much more deepened going forward. But I have no doubt that he will roll up his sleeves and do more for Lagosians when he's elected the governor of Lagos State.
All right, we'll leave the conversation here. Sheon Faleye, lawyer and a member of the All Progressives Congress. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.